Hey guys, Joe Robert here. Episode 12, POD Pod. It's a print-on-demand podcast brought to you by PODninjas.com. My name is Joe Robert. Super excited to have you guys here. We are going to get started, and I have something interesting to talk through today with you, and it's something that I heard on another podcast, and I thought it was very interesting. And I thought that it could apply to a print-on-demand Shopify store, right? And basically, they were on this podcast talking about this company. I forget the name, but it was an airline, and I forget the name of the company. But basically, what happened is this airline was failing, and they were receiving really bad reviews from the customers, and they were seeing ticket prices. They had to slash their ticket prices in order to try to stay in business, and they, year over year, were just getting worse and worse. And they ended up getting a new CEO, and his mindset was that they needed to focus on all of the little micro transactions that the company experiences. And basically what he meant by that was that he needed to focus on every single time a customer interacted with the company. And what he meant by that was everything including their website, everything including their phone service, everything including the clerks at the baggage claim and the staff on the plane and everything, right? Like, he needed to focus on every single possible interaction between the customer and somebody or something that represents the company. And what they were able to do is they basically dissected their business, and they looked at every single aspect. They looked at all these different interactions, and they pinpointed the ones that were causing them the most pain. And basically, they were realizing that people were having a lot of trouble dealing with calling in ticket reservations and also making changes to their reservations. And that's not really applicable to this story, right? Because we're not an airline. But I started thinking about it, and this is a perfect case study, right? A perfect representation of what some of you guys could be going through with your Shopify store, right? I think if we look at it the same way, if we look at our print-on-demand Shopify stores the same way, we might see that we could potentially be this airline, right? And we could potentially be neglecting certain aspects of our business or certain interactions with our customers that we might not have thought were a big deal. And I think, if we dissect our business, right, and go start to finish, and start being the moment that the customer is aware of us, and then finish being, when they give us, or when they get their product, right? So things that came to my mind is like something as simple as, the name of the Facebook page that you're showing them the ad from. Right? Like, I'm sure there's, some of you guys that might have a pretty generic Facebook page name, and maybe you're selling something in the pit bull niche, but your Facebook page name is like Treasures for You, right? Like something random. Or maybe your logo is off-putting, right? Maybe it's not a high-quality logo. Maybe you made it yourself and you're not very good at graphic design, right? So something as simple as that. I even think through like little things on product pages, like colors or different ways that things are worded. Like, those are all things that could be considered microtransactions with your customer, right? Like different things that you're gonna have to make sure is up to par, so that way you have, when people are interacting with your store, that they're not getting turned off. And I think if we think through exactly what this company did, this airline, basically they did a complete overhaul. They looked at their business honestly. They came up with an action plan, and they changed it, right? And I think for us to do that with our Shopify store is pretty easy, right? I think that for most of us, we can take a look at the various stages, whether it's stuff from social media, maybe our home page, our collection page, our product page, even our checkout process, right? Like, how many of you guys have actually made a test purchase from your store, right? Like, a lot of you probably haven't, right? Like, I'm guessing that you haven't. And when I say, make a purchase, like, literally go onto your store and make a purchase and then just refund yourself, but try to see what the experience looks like. if you're seeing issues with your add to cart rate, or your initiate checkout rate is through the roof, people are initiating checkouts and not actually going through with the purchase, like, go test it and see what that actually looks like, and do it on desktop and do it on mobile, right? You might be surprised. Maybe see if you can find someone that has a different phone than you, right? Like, I have an iPhone, and I tend to think that everybody has iPhones, and to be honest, a lot of pages on the web, they look really good on an iPhone, right? Like, I think a lot of things on the internet are pretty much made for an iPhone or like a Samsung Galaxy, right? Like, those are like the two go-to phones that the majority of people have. But there's a lot of, just because it's a majority that have those, it's a lot of people that don't. And I think if you can see what your store looks like on some of these other devices, or maybe even on a tablet, right? Like, that was something that I didn't do for a long time. And then when I finally did, I realized that there was some things that, were kind of off-putting, because I'm used to seeing it either on desktop or on mobile. And then if you look at it on a tablet, it's kind of a completely different thing. It's kind of a blend between the two. So all of those things are super important as you guys make sure that you're optimizing your store. And it really struck home, because like I said, I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about the issues that this airline was seeing, and then they talked about the approach that they took to go about fixing it. And then they talked about the result, right? Like, this airline, it looked at these microtransactions, kind of came up with some action plans, and set some new policies and changes, and worked on some training, stuff like that. And over a year's time, they were able to improve. And I forget all the specifics. I even forget the name of the actual company, but they were able to win customer service awards, and they were beginning to be profitable, and the stock price was rising. And it was all due to the CEO realizing that they were not focusing on the micro transactions. They were only focusing on the macro. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap with Shopify, right? Like, we focus so much on, like, just our product, right? Like, that would be the macro, making sure that our product is perfect. But what about all the micro things, right? Like, all the things like your Facebook page logo, maybe your Facebook page name, the way your ad copy is set up, the way that your store is laid out. Like, I've done a lot of store reviews, right? Like, a lot of people have reached out to me in the past and asked me to take a look at their store, and I see a lot of stuff, right? Like, I see a lot of people that are making major mistakes, and they're doing it because I don't think people quite understand exactly what to do. But I also think that people aren't willing to invest the time or the effort, or maybe even the money, right? Like, to pay somebody to make them some graphics. Like, a lot of times people that aren't graphic designers, they just either choose not to put any graphics on their store, or they make it all themselves, and then it doesn't really come out good at all. So I think microtransactions is something that we need to focus on with our customers and in our audiences, and making sure that at every single level of our business, we're putting our best product forward. And when I say our best product, I don't literally mean like your print-on-demand product. I mean that every single time your customer is seeing something related to your site or your store, that it's top-notch, and that there's never going to be a moment where they feel like they're on something that's not a superior website, right? Like, we want to give them the impression that they're dealing with a professional company. Like, if you guys go to like Nike.com or even Amazon.com, right? Like, you guys go there and everything looks crisp, everything flows, everything makes sense, everything is, aligned correctly. And then some of these Shopify stores, they have low quality images, or the logo looks like it was made in like Microsoft Paint by like a 10-year-old or something. And, things don't look good. And I think that people don't realize that, hey, like, I'm actually making a real business, right? Like, I know that it's a Shopify store, and I know that this is print on demand, and I know that it's Facebook ads and all that, right? But the customers, they think that they're on real businesses. And when you guys fall short in any of the aspects that I've mentioned, you guys are going to have a really tough time converting buyers and building trust with them, because everything that you include on your store is going to be perceived and judged by your customers. So that was just something that was on my mind. Decided when I made the pod today that I wanted to talk about that. Let me know what you guys think, if you guys feel like microtransactions are something that has affected you. And then I'm also super curious, right? Like, if you guys made it this far in the podcast, I'm going to post this as always in the Print on Demand Ninjas Facebook group. if you guys could comment on that post. And I'm just curious, are you listening to this on SoundCloud or are you listening to this on YouTube? I'm trying to figure out where most people are listening, and I keep on mentioning it, but I'm also still trying to get this on Apple Podcasts, so you guys can listen there as well. But just let me know if you guys could comment if you made it this far, whether you're listening on SoundCloud or on YouTube. That would be a huge help. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys in the next episode.